Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today, the episode is focused on receiving a tough diagnosis during pregnancy. Many of us have received a life-limiting or a non-compatible with life diagnosis. I was in this position as well with Jasmine when we first received the diagnosis of CDH, and even more so later with the diagnosis of mosaic trisomy 15. And there is such a unique grief that comes with receiving a diagnosis like this. In this episode, I talk with Ashley and Corinne, who both received a tough diagnosis during their pregnancy. They share about the diagnosis itself, the treatment they received, and about their losses. They also talk about the grief of receiving the actual diagnosis and how the treatment of their babies changed after receiving the diagnosis. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Ashley and Corinne. Ashley, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ashley, of course. My husband's name is Sean. I have a stepdaughter named Olivia. And then we also have a 3-year-old son that we had via IVF. And then we have our angel baby, Riley, who will forever be 3 weeks old. She was born in February, and we lost her this past March. And we've just been kind of handling that as time goes on.
What day in March?
She passed on March 11th. She was born on February 19th.
Oh, wow. My Jasmine, she was still born on March 11th of 2018.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't realize they had that. I mean, not something we want them to have in common, but
But it's still kind of nice.
yeah, it's like one of those weird, I guess, coincidences.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Corinne, do you mind telling a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I have a husband named Steven. I have a little girl. She's almost 4. Her name is Emerson. I had my angel baby Eden last May 29th, who was diagnosed with trisomy 18, and he turned a year this year. And I just had my rainbow baby last week on
Oh, wow.
Friday, and her name is
Congrats.
Elowen. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you are exhausted with adjusting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a transition, especially being a mom of 3, but having one angel baby is just, I think it's a weird kind of reality that we're in right now, trying to like navigate parenthood as a mom of 3, but with 2 living children and one angel baby. So it's been a long week.
Well, and I found too after having my rainbow that, you think like, okay, they're born, like I'm just going to be happy, but it kind of brings back up all that grief and even some new grief that you weren't expecting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think right now I'm dealing with a lot of those triggers, and even being in the hospital last week, a lot of those triggers that I had with my son, and then just trying to, navigate, like you said, grief in this new time, but also all those worries and fears. And I think being a part of the lost community so deeply as we are, that we've heard a million and one stories, and that's just kind of, I think, all my brain is repeating to myself right now. So I have to keep reminding myself that she's here, she's okay, this is our reality, and we're going to just take it a day at a time regardless of what happened last year.
Yeah, that is kind of a hard thing about the lost community is that we know too much.
No, absolutely. I think it's one that you don't want to be a part of, but once you are, like, I'm so glad that I found people that I can connect with and not feel alone. But I think on the other hand, we've just heard so many. I mean, there's, stillbirths and failed diagnoses, and then babies who have SIDS. And I think all of those things are coming into play now with a new baby, and not wanting something bad to happen, not saying something will, but also understanding that nothing in life is guaranteed, and we we know this the best. And so I think just having to deal with those emotions and those feelings and just navigating life now with all of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot. So I know that both of you were giving diagnoses during your pregnancy. So Ashley, do you mind talking a little bit about your experience, like what your baby was diagnosed with?
Yeah, of course. So basically, pregnancy was very like uncomplicated. We went in for our 20-week anatomy scan. Everything was going great. I was just laying there on the table, and then all of a sudden, the ultrasound tech got very quiet. Her heart was on the screen, and me from like my job, a little bit of background is I mean, I knew what I was seeing was not right. Like I could even tell that there was something going on with her heart. So basically, at first, the ultrasound tech thought it was something called Epstein's anomaly, which is a congenital heart defect. And we went to MFM, had a stat referral we were seeing within that week. Went to a doctor who had like, it was like first availability. They actually diagnosed her with something called atrioventricular septal defect. So basically, long story short, she's missing the middle connection of the chambers in her heart. So like usually you have four chambers. Technically, she still had those four chambers, but they were made up completely different. Instead of having two separate valves in the middle of her heart, she had one common valve. And then also she was diagnosed with something called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And basically that is where her left side of her heart was smaller than her right side. Basically throughout pregnancy, we had many, many scans. They did suggest an amniocentesis just because of APSD. It is quite common in Down syndrome babies. So we went ahead and went forth with the amniocentesis. The results came back, or the first set of results came back completely normal. No trisomy 18, no trisomy 21, like all of them were normal. But they were like, okay, well, we do think that there's something going on just because of the type of heart defect that she has. And they suggested doing a more in-depth thing called a microarray. It took a little bit longer to come back, but when it did come back, she had a very, very rare chromosomal deletion. So rare that less than 50 people ever reported in the whole entire world had a form of that deletion. And it actually did not have a name for it, like a whole lot of chromosome abnormalities do have. So what hers was called was partial monosomy chromosome 8p 23.1 microdeletion, is what it was called. So a whole lot of words. But basically you have like two sets of each chromosome. One of her eighth chromosomes was missing a very, very small portion of it. And they gave us a whole lot of possibilities, anywhere from developmental delays, cognitive delays, behavioral issues, anything from seizures, speech delays, or being nonverbal is even one of them. So we went in basically like being prepared to go over everything like art related. So basically we were told she was going to have a series of three heart surgeries throughout her first year, or well, two without her throughout her first year of life, and then a third one at around like 3 years old. So we kind of went in knowing that we were, of course, made high risk right off the bat just because of all the possibilities. Going into the third trimester, she ended up being an IUGR baby, so an intrauterine growth restricted baby. She was measuring in the anywhere from third to fifth to seventh percentile. So it kind of changed week by week on what was going on with her. But overall, she was really, really healthy. She was born. I don't know if we want to get into all that now, but she was born very healthy. She did need a little bit of support when she was born. She came out a little on the purple side, but breathing. So they took her for about 15 minutes, kind of like stabilized her, and then she was placed back on me for about 10 minutes, not needing an oxygen. And as far as like, she did okay. She did great. And then we did hit bumps in the roads. But overall, just the diagnosis, like during pregnancy, it kind of took us for a roller coaster ride, just because throughout the whole pregnancy, we had fetal echoes done every 4 weeks, and something changed every single time we went for an echo. She her heart kept showing improvements each time. So we were, expecting like, oh, maybe we won't have to do all of those surgeries. So they kind of like the surgical path for her kept changing, and it brought up hope, but also like, oh my gosh, is this too good to be true kind of thing? Is like honestly, our first talk with the doctors was they did ask if we wanted to terminate. That was not something we wanted for her. We wanted her to make that decision, but it was definitely a roller coaster ride of emotions. Lots of like ups and downs.
So did you expect then that you would be going home with a medically complex child?
So yes, we were expecting to come with a medically complex child. So what was expected was she was supposed to go. We were she was born at one of the major hospitals around here who basically only deals with high risk pregnancies, and then she was transferred to the children's hospital that's connected to it. And the first week we were told, hey, like we're planning on sending her home in a few weeks. She might not have to have her first surgery. She might just need her big repair at 6 months, and we can go from there. And we were like, great, that sounds amazing. We hit some bumps in the road. She was having a little bit of issues with her belly. Sometimes that's common with congenital heart defects because of the change in the blood flow throughout their body. So then we were told that she was going to have something called a pulmonary artery band placed. It's an open chest surgery where they would just place like a little band around her pulmonary artery. But she also needed something called a PDA ligation. And most babies are born with like a little vessel that closes right after birth, but hers did not close. So that's where the PDA ligation will come in. And we were told like we were going to be taking her home, medically complex. She may or may not have needed an NG tube. That may or may not have had to turn into a G tube. Kind of depended on her. And then like her pediatrician and her team from the hospital were definitely planning on a lot of like early intervention for her just to like kind of better her. And then the plans were at least weekly cardiology appointments and then probably every other week pediatric appointments for her.
Yeah, so that definitely would have been a lot afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Corinne, do you mind sharing about the diagnosis you received during pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely. So around, I want to say 13 weeks, we did it a little later in our pregnancy, but we did the NIPT testing, which is the non-invasive prenatal testing that everyone usually, opts into doing. And we got the results back 2 weeks later through a call from a geneticist telling us that our son was 20% higher risk for having trisomy 18, which is Edwards syndrome. And it's basically just a chromosomal abnormality. There's an extra 18th chromosome. So instead of two, there was three. And this wasn't a full diagnosis. This was just saying, hey, he could be higher risk for having this. During the same phone call is when we found out his gender. So they gave us the news first. They said, your baby might have trisomy 18, and also he's a boy. So I think at that point, there was just so much going through my mind about, because they listed off just everything that could be wrong with trisomy 18 babies, and they ended the conversation with, these babies are non-compatible with life and they do not live past a year of their life. If that, they do not live a day. So after finding all of that out and then finding out that he was a boy, I think it was just absolutely devastating for us. But we made the decision very early on because, like, I believe it was Ashley said, they offered us to terminate, and we just decided that that wasn't a choice that we were going to make for our family. And we wanted to continue the pregnancy for as long as we could and fight for him. If he was going to fight, then we were going to fight. So after that, we went to see a high risk doctor. I am high risk myself because I have a heart defect. So, amongst the diagnosis that we got, we were already seeing a high risk. So we went to them and we did an anatomy scan at around, I want to say like 15, 16 weeks. And immediately we were seeing markers for trisomy 18. It was an underdeveloped cerebellum. He had a no frontal cortex. He had a VSD, horseshoe kidneys, clenched fists, rocker bottom feet, which is, I'm suddenly forgetting, clubbed feet. That's that's the other name for it. But he just had a multitude of problems that were already showing up on the anatomy scan, including cysts, smaller stomach because he wasn't swallowing amniotic fluid. And we decided then that we wanted to do an amniocentesis to get a full diagnosis. That way we were doing everything in our power to get him the care that he needed. So I think around 18 weeks, we did the amniocentesis. 20 weeks, we got the full diagnosis of full trisomy 18. And I believe it's with trisomy 21, trisomy 18, and trisomy 13, there's 3 different kinds. There's full, partial, and mosaic. And he did have the full, so he fully had that extra chromosome. I was able to carry him up to 33 weeks, and he was doing really, really bad at the beginning. He wasn't swallowing any amniotic fluid. His cysts were just growing. He was just having a really hard time. And I want to say around the 26, 27 week mark, he started to improve significantly. So at the beginning, we had fully prepared for him to not do well, and working with the palliative care team, they had told us his likelihood of life was little to none. Like he would probably be a stillbirth, or if he was born, he probably would be limp, and we would not see a ton of time with him. And I think that was super discouraging, but we just kept fighting for him, and he started to do really well. And we reassessed with our palliative care team, and they told us that we should prepare for a NICU stay because he started to do well. His cyst started to dissolve, his VSD was looking better, his cerebellum was looking better, and so we had fully prepared to stay in NICU with him and go home with some kind of hospice care, which is normally what they provide for these kind of babies or infants, kids, because sadly, I mean, the state that we live in, I live in California, and just the country that we live in don't really fight for babies who have chromosomal abnormalities, especially because they're classified as non-compatible, which is something I have learned is entirely untrue because I've seen so many trisomy children who are compatible with life. But he started to do well. We planned for NICU, planned to do hospice care. And then at 33 weeks, I went in with my high risk for a regular anatomy scan that we would do every 2 weeks with an echo. And I could just tell already I want to say before this, like my care team was amazing through all of this. My high risk doctor was amazing. She grew a rapport with me. She knew Eden as much as I did. And that appointment was so different because she came in and she didn't make the jokes that she did before. And she was just very serious. And she told us that basically his cord had begun to clot and it would eventually go necrotic and fall off. And that we would be able to make the choice whether we wanted him to pass in the womb or if we wanted to meet him earthside. And we chose that we wanted to meet him earthside. So she planned an induction for us 4 days later. And he was born at 33 weeks, 4 days. And we got him for an hour and a half before he peacefully passed, which is more than, I can be grateful for because that's all I wanted. I wanted to hear him cry. I wanted to see his eyes and I wanted time with him, which is the 3 things that I got with him. I got 2. He was crying when he came out. He opened his eyes and we spent an hour and a half with him. So it was a long and very, very hard pregnancy, but there's not one thing I regret about any of it and any of the choices that I made because it's very different for each individual. And I say this all the time, like what works for me may not work for you, but I just don't think I could have seen myself bringing Eden home and knowing that he wouldn't have been thriving the way that I wanted him to, which I guess can sound a little selfish, but to me, I just feel like that's not the life that I wanted for him. And we relied heavily on prayer and just faith during that time. And I think that's what helped me ultimately make that decision to choose comfort care with him and to not do full interventions and just to have him pass peacefully as he did.
Kind of building off of something that you said about Jasmine, she was diagnosed with mosaic trisomy 15. So, I have experience with doctors and trisomy and how they, just kind of, as soon as you get that diagnosis, they kind of lose all hope, just are more like negative about it. Was that your experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think just in general, they were I think I was asked, both me and my husband were asked multiple times up until the 24-week mark if we wanted to terminate, after being very adamant that that wasn't something that we wanted to do. And even after we had said that, our palliative care team reminded us constantly that these babies don't live and that they were incompatible with life, and that we should choose hospice care or not do full interventions, which, I mean, by all means, if he was doing a lot better, we probably would have changed our minds. But I just think the way that it was handled could have been way better, because I don't understand why our children weren't given the same courtesy. I mean, I understand the illness, but life is life. Like, if they're going to fight, let them fight, you know?
Well, and I also think that it's not, I mean, I think like us having hope for our babies, like, why is that a bad thing? Like, there's a difference between being realistic and basically saying you have zero chance.
No, absolutely. And I think that's what, and it's funny because it's all, I mean, we're sitting in a scientific, environment, in a medical environment. You're seeing the same results that I'm seeing, and you're basing them off of statistics, but each baby is absolutely different. Eden, being a boy, statistically was supposed to be a stillbirth. He wasn't supposed to live. He was supposed to die in the womb, and that's not what happened. He survived birth. We got him here for an hour and 30 minutes, which is way more than what other people get. But I've seen so many other trisomy 18 babies who live far longer than that, and thrive for a very long time. So I think that the healthcare system has some evolving to do in that kind of space.
Yeah, definitely. Was that your experience, Ashley, when you received the diagnosis?
Oh my gosh, definitely. Literally, I'm listening to her talk, and I'm like, I can relate to this so much because the whole entire, well, I shouldn't say the whole entire pregnancy. Like, I loved my high risk doctors. They were amazing. But every time we kind of talked about something, it was like, oh, but she's a chromosome baby. But then, like, so when we got that diagnosis of her being an AP baby, I mean, I joined Facebook groups, I got in contact with other AP parents, and these babies do or can live on to have like a good life. Medically complex, yes, but they have a kid life playing, and yeah, they might play a little bit differently than other babies or other kids or whatever, but I saw something that like I feel like the doctors didn't. So like the doctors were very much more like, especially when it came to like her surgeries and stuff like that. Like, oh, but she's a chromosome baby. Okay, but let's just talk about her as a baby, not a chromosome baby. Like I felt like she was constantly being put in the category of this quote unquote chromosome baby. But like when she was born, they did like head to toe scans on her, legit like head to toe ultrasounds, I think twice right after she was born, just looking for something wrong with her. And like they scanned her or they did like ultrasounds in her brain, like I don't know how many times. And they were like, oh, like everything's intact. Her ventricles are intact. She's, oh, what was it called? Was it the, Corinne might be able to help me with this. Was it the corpus callosum? Is that what it's called? Something
Mhm.
like that, where like it was completely intact. They weren't seeing things with her that you potentially could see with AP or yeah, AP babies, but they weren't seeing any of that. But they kept putting her in the category of, oh, but she's a chromosome. And I'm like, okay, but you're giving her that label. Yes, I understand she really is a chromosome baby, but you're putting her in that category. Let's see how she wants to fight. Let's see how she wants to live. That's just how I felt, but definitely, definitely I saw that a lot with doctors.
I feel like they forget that these are our children. These aren't just, to them, yes, maybe it's a chromosome baby or a trisomy baby or whatever, but these are our children and we're not gonna stop fighting for them.
Right, exactly. And don't get me wrong, like she had several really great doctors. One of them, like I'm still in contact with today because she was she was like God sent for us. But then you had those other doctors, like I said, that just wanted to categorize her. Like I'm like, she's not just a statistic, she's a human being.
I think doctors a lot just, I mean, I can see where they're coming from sometimes. Like, I love playing the devil's advocate, but I mean, in one hand, I can see that they see so many of these cases, especially high risk doctors. I know my doctor alone has seen so many of these cases, and it's heartbreaking for them because they grow to know these babies too. But on the other hand, I had an amazing high risk. This was not in my case either. Like, I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the person that I got to take care of me and to take care of Eden. But I think they just become so desensitized to it sometimes that they lose compassion for those things. But I think I've I've seen it so much in my case, like even when I went to triage with when I was pregnant with Eden, and they're like, "Oh, you're having a trisomy 18 baby. Why are you here? What do you want us to do? You chose comfort care." Like it just feels very discouraging and like no one cares. No one wants to help your baby. But I've seen this in a whole bunch of Facebook groups that I'm in with other trisomy 18 babies. In certain states, they won't operate on your baby. You have to go to 2, 3 states over for them to even think about giving your baby something as simple as a G tube, which I think is just sad. Like you want to do everything that you can for your kid, but the world is fighting against you, saying, no, no, like they want your baby to die. And that's the last thing that you want to happen, but you literally have to fight and fight and fight to get the health care that they need.
Which, yeah, it really is sad that it all is dependent on what state you live in, what hospital you go to, what doctors you have. Like there isn't one standard, really.
No, yeah, it's all I've seen so many stories of because I'm part of the trisomy soft groups and other groups on Facebook for trisomy 18 babies, and just how many women are messaging like, hey, what hospital can I go to get my daughter or my son this heart operation that they need? And there's very, very few that will actually perform the operation. Like I know the only hospital in my state that would do it is 2, 3 hours away from me to perform a G tube surgery. Other than that, they quote unquote don't operate on trisomy 18 babies because they won't live, which is heartbreaking.
So I know that for me too, when I first got the diagnosis, that I feel like you're first, before you even have the loss, you're grieving the diagnosis and the not having a quote normal baby. Is that something that either of you went through?
Yeah, definitely. When they told me like all the possibilities with Riley, and then not only that, her being a heart baby, we were prepared that when she was going to be born, she was going to be taken right away from me. She was going to go over to the children's hospital. She was going to be admitted into the NICU. So like I didn't get that experience that I had with my son, where like you give birth, you get to take your baby home in a couple days. That first car ride home, like no, like we didn't get that. We got okay, well, I just had my baby. Now I'm in the hospital alone while my husband is with our daughter next door. And it was like, okay, it was very isolating, honestly, very isolating.
I had like the same experience. It's like a lot of that anticipatory grief and just grieving what you know you're not going to have. And I mean, it's it was a little different in my sense, I feel, because like I think we had just come to the conclusion, like I think I knew very early on that Eden wasn't going to be with us very long. He was going to be here very briefly. And so I had already started preparing myself for that. And I use prepare myself very like, I don't know, very generously because there's no preparing for losing a child. I mean, you guys probably know this. Like as much as you say that you can and will be, there's nothing that'll prepare you for that. But the same thing, I mean, when we went into the hospital, we had Eden. We literally only had him for like 4 hours, including the time that he was alive. And then we gave him to the nurse. They took him down to the morgue. We did not have him for long.
Yeah, so like preparing for a baby to pass. So like we were told when we first got like Riley's diagnosis with her congenital heart defect that of course there's no cure to congenital heart defects. There's just surgeries. And her first diagnosis with the AVSD and the HLHS, or two cardiac defects, we were told that the only thing where there was three palliative surgeries for her heart. So basically, we were given, if she does make it to the third heart surgery and it's successful, there's a possibility of it failing later in life. There's a possibility of her needing a heart transplant later in life. There's a possibility of needing that heart transplant and not being able to get that heart transplant. So that grief, like just kind of throughout her life, how long are we going to have her? And during my pregnancy, I tried to prepare myself for the worst case scenario because there's not much known about 8P babies. And I remember talking with family members about it, that I was really scared, that things weren't going to go right, that she was, ultimately going to pass. And it's almost like I kind of felt almost like crazy in a sense, just because they were like, oh no, that's not going to happen. Like, we're going to pull through this. This is going to happen. And just all the emotions kind of like packed into one little ball, just kind of like go through your head. I feel like almost like 24/7, along with that grief of not getting that normal newborn experience. I wasn't the one to bathe her for the first time. Just little things like that. I didn't change her first diaper. Simple things like that. I grieved that. Like I grieved all those experiences, all the ones that like I didn't get to do a lot of for first. And that was like really hard for me.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Jasmine was stillborn, so we never got a chance to do any of those things either. And it's just, I think there's just so many more things that people don't realize. It's not just our baby we're losing, but all the things that we wanted to do with them and all the normal experiences we wanted to have. We wanted to just give birth and be able to go home a couple of days later, and that's just not what happened.
Yeah, and I feel like we got Riley for 3 weeks. I'm so happy we got her for those 3 weeks. But I didn't realize, even after having another child, I didn't realize that moms who experience loss, they still go through everything postpartum. So like, I'm sure you can definitely relate to this, but like after going home and not having your baby, you're still going through all the physical things postpartum. And it was very like almost mind-blowing, mind-opening too. And also during that time, I felt like I grieved a lot during that time.
That was something I definitely did not expect either. I mean, I don't know what I thought would happen, but I think it's just because we aren't taught about any of this. But, like my milk came in and I still had, all the hormone like going up and down. And yeah, that was like definitely not something I expected to happen. And then it just hits you that much harder because you don't have your baby there to make all of that any better.
Yeah, and like when we left the hospital, like she had already passed, and we had lactation come in and talk to us because I was pumping. And in my head, I just thought I was just gonna leave the hospital without my baby, and my life would just kind of like pick up, I guess. But like they came in and they talked to me and they're like, well, you're still gonna be producing milk. I'm like, oh my gosh, duh, of course. I didn't even like comprehend, put those pieces together, I guess. So like she was like, do you want to donate or do you want to donate and keep pumping or do you want to dry up? And I was like, for me, my personal opinion with that, just like mental health wise, like I was ready to stop. But in my head, I was like, oh, I can just go home and just stop. Well, no, you can't. Like you have to continue to pump. You have to like slowly like wean yourself. Just different things like that. That I felt like I grieved almost just as hard as losing my child because I was going through all of these physical things, but I didn't have my baby to like show for it, I guess.
Yeah, I was definitely walking around with the cabbage leaves trying to get it to dry up faster.
Cabbage leaves and peppermint tea for me.
So, how did you come up with the name for your baby?
So, kind of to do like a long story short, so my husband and I struggled with like 5 years of infertility before having our son. And when we started trying to have a baby, we couldn't really come up with a boy name, but my husband right away, if we have a girl, I want her name to be Riley Grace. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I love that name. So I honestly don't even know where he got it from. He literally just one day, I remember very vividly, he was sitting in our living room, he was at his computer desk, and he just turns around and he's like, if we have a girl, I want her name to be Riley Grace. So that name just stuck. And then once we found out that we were having a little girl, immediately we were like, that's our Riley. That's our Riley Grace.
Oh, and it's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
I love a good theme, and I thought about our kids' names very, very hard before they came. My daughter Emerson, her name came to me in a dream, and I knew that I wanted her middle name to be some kind of rendition of moon, so her middle name's Luna. And when we got pregnant with Eden, I said, you know what? I think I want to keep the E name theme going. So a first name, all of our kids' first names will start with E, and their middle name will be some kind of astronomy name. And so I told my husband, we have to find an E name that fits good for a boy, but his middle name will be some rendition of the sun, like a little play on, because he's our son, and then he will be our son. Like that's our like symbol for him now. So we chose Elio, which quite literally means the sun. And then we were thinking about I love boys' names that could be girls' names and girls' names that could be boys' names. So I was just playing around with Eden. I said, I think I really, really like Eden. And just biblically, the Garden of Eden. And I kept telling my husband, I think Eden's going to be a paradise for us. He's going to be here very briefly. You know, the Garden of Eden was for Adam and Eve, and then that's going to be it. So I think Eden is going to be our name for him, and it stuck. And then his name was Eden Elio, and it
I
just
love
fit
that.
our theme. It fit everything, and I love that it had meaning. And that's exactly what he was for us. So he was our paradise very briefly, and that was it.
I love that. It's like the name was just meant to be
Yeah,
for both of
absolutely.
you guys.
Oh my gosh, I love how much thought you put into each of your baby's names. That is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. My daughter, who was just born, her name's Elowen Nova for star. So my sun, moon, and star. And then my husband's an arborist. He's a tree climber, and her name means elm tree. So we thought about their names very, very deeply.
That's
I love
absolutely
it
gorgeous
though.
and totally gave me goosebumps. I love that.
Thank you.
So, did either of you find any resources that you found particularly helpful after loss, either about having a rare diagnosis or just loss in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before Eden was born, I joined the Facebook groups, which is from diagnosis to delivery, trisomy soft, trisomy 18, Edwards syndrome group. But even with the loss community, they recommended me tons of books to read, which I think helped significantly. And then finding a lot of the Instagram accounts that helped with loss and grief, just dealing with those. I can't remember. I mean, obviously, you being one of them, but there's so many out there that have helped tremendously, like Mira's Mission. I'm trying to think of all the ones that like I became a part of, RTZ Hope, even Molly Bears, the ones that give the weighted teddy bears for babies. There's so many resources out there that truly want to help you. I still have people send me cards every Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving for Eden. And I think not just for me, but for my husband, who felt so out of the loop during this time because he wasn't as ingrained in it as we were as moms. We had such a relationship with them. For dads, I don't think it's so different. So I think the fact that they include him and they make him a part of Eden's life and a part of that community, which is, it's sad, but it's also saying, you know what, you're not alone. You're not alone in this. I think that has been so tremendously helpful, not just for me and not just for him, but for us together to both cope with the grief and still feel united in it. It's more than we thought we would get.
Yeah, like for us is pretty much the same. I found a lot of support, especially with the 8P, joining an 8P Facebook group, just because, I mean, I was able to ask parents who have already walked this walk and are currently like walking this walk kind of thing. And I learned a lot about 8P babies, 8P kids, even like the 8P pregnancy, some complications that could arise, different things like that. That helped tremendously because you walk around saying my baby was partial monosomy, like chromosome 8P, then people look at you like, I have no idea what you just said. Even some of the doctors were like, 8P, oh, I don't know what that is because it's so rare. It doesn't have an actual name for it. And like once her blood test came back on once she was born, because we also did blood tests on her for genetics, her microdeletion was actually much smaller, so it took out even more genes. So there were less than 25 people ever reported with her form of deletion or her size of deletion with the genes, not even all the genes, but some of the genes that were deleted in her sequence. So it was even like more rare basically for that. And then with the heart community, I'm a nurse and I learned a little bit about congenital heart defects, but I did not realize how many babies are diagnosed with congenital heart defects. Some are diagnosed like intrauterine, some are diagnosed right after birth, some aren't diagnosed until like kid, teen, adulthood. And just the amount of people that actually have heart defects just was mind blowing to me. So Facebook groups for that, getting in contact with heart moms that were like in my community. And then there's also a Facebook group called Mamas of Heart Angels. That's been a big help for me. And then the hospital that Riley was at, they actually do a parent like support group, bereavement group via like Zoom or whatever. That helped a lot for my husband because one thing, at least in our community, that we found is there is not a lot of spousal support, not a lot of dad support, I should say, with the loss of a child. So we've definitely found that, and this parent group has been like really the only real, I guess, support. And then another support that I've gone through was I did seek out therapy because after losing Riley, we actually lost her. I don't think I would mention this, but we actually lost her very, in a sense, suddenly. We actually lost her from complications to sepsis. So we were not mentally prepared for that at all. So seeked out therapy and realizing, oh my gosh, there's really no support for dad in this area for that. So I go to, it's something called Partners for Women, and they basically deal with pregnancy and infant loss, as well as complications. I shouldn't say complications, I don't like that word. Like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, things like that. But they also see spouses. So other than that, like for me, I have found a lot being a mom, but as a dad, I feel like on his end, I feel like there could be more.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The men don't get a lot of support, and I mean, some women don't get a lot of support either. So it's kind of, I guess it all just depends on your support system. But I think that I think one good thing about having, the online loss community is that it's something that is available to anybody who wants to access it.
Yeah, definitely. Because I do know, like, in some of like the lost mom groups, there's actually dads that are like involved in that too, which I absolutely love, just so like they have that support.
So I know for me, I was told that Jasmine, with her diagnosis, that there was a less than 1% chance of a pregnancy, having that diagnosis. So I know before, for me personally, I would think, okay, that's a low statistic. But then after being hit with that, now I feel like that's a huge statistic and I don't like statistics anymore. So I'm curious if either of you feel the same way.
Okay, I just want to say again. So I feel that very strongly. So we are actually going to start trying to have another baby here soon. But that whole quote unquote statistic, and I have come to really not like that, just like you. Like I don't like that. There's a very small quote unquote percentage of me having another heart baby, me having another chromosome abnormality baby. But that small percentage is so big to me that I now just don't like statistics. Like I don't like that percentage thing. Like I don't like that label. Like it's just that is just so much bigger to me now that I've already gone through it.
To me, it feels like, okay, you say 1%, that means it's happening to me.
Exactly. Yes.
No, I feel the same exact way. I feel like especially since when we got the diagnosis for Eden, and they kept saying it's only 20% higher risk, only 20%. And we were banking on that 80% the entire time, and it turned out he had full T18. It was just like a big slap in the face. Any percentage is absolutely terrifying now. And even when we started trying to have my daughter, like that is all I could think about. And the fact that in some of the groups that I was in, like it happened to them twice. They're like, they had one trisomy 18 and then they got another trisomy 18. And it was just, I despise statistics as well now. I hate them. I think that we need to not use that kind of vocabulary in a medical setting, especially when it's like this intimate, like with babies and like fertility. Like maybe we should just kind of throw the statistics out.
No, I definitely agree. Because, I mean, when you think about it, somebody has to be part of that statistic. So, like maybe we just don't use them.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. Let's just throw it out.
So, if you were going to give any advice to somebody who had just received a diagnosis like this, what would you tell them?
I think I would definitely say, for starters, find a support system who is going to be there, someone who cares, and you find out, I mean, you guys probably know just as much as I do. You find out very quickly who is actually going to be there for you and who isn't. And I think that is the most important thing because they are going to hold you up and watch you cry and just be that person for you both during and after. And I think the faster that you can find that, the better. And definitely do your research, reach out, do whatever you can. If you're in this, you're in this. You want to help your baby in any way you can. Go all out. Don't be scared to ask questions and question the doctors and advocate for yourself. Advocate for yourself. It's not just your life, it's your baby's life, and you want to make sure that each of you are getting the utmost care and the utmost respect that you can possibly get. And those are what I feel are the most important things, during the pregnancy and even after to make sure that you're getting the things that you want and you're being heard.
Yeah, she definitely stole the words right out of my mouth. Support system 110%. And with that support system, also knowing that your tribe is going to change. You're going to realize, kind of like what she already said, was who is there for you and who's not. And in that moment, stick to those who are there for you. Let them be that shoulder that you cry on. Like, let them be that ear that like you need to like listen to you kind of thing. And then another thing is second opinions. When you get those diagnoses and you get these like for Riley, it changed so much. Like, how was she going to be as a baby? How was she going to be as a kid? Her heart, her surgeries, second opinions. If you don't like what they're saying, or you say, or you've heard that X, Y, and Z happens with another baby, or that they've had X, Y, and Z surgery, why can't that be offered for my baby? Get second opinions. And if you get a third opinion, even that was a big one for us, especially when it came to her heart, were second opinion and kind of like what other babies had gone through with their congenital heart defects and such.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. I know that when we got our diagnosis with Jasmine, that she basically just said, hey, there's a 50-50 chance that she'll make it, that she won't. I was given no other information, no resources, no nothing. And then just like you guys, I went to look for Facebook groups and then found, oh, hey, there actually are treatment options. There are other things that we can do. And, but there are things that they don't tell us. So is there anything else that either of you would like to add?
I think I would just also add, like, take care of yourself. Like this time is going to be, and I tell, people, because I talk about this on my TikTok. Like I've been making videos since the beginning with Eden's pregnancy, during his pregnancy, life after loss, and even pregnancy after loss. And I tell kind of everyone, like, this is going to be the hardest battle of your life. It's going to push you to your limits. You're going to cry. You're going to want to feel, take care of yourself, but also let yourself break sometimes. Like it's okay to not be okay, and you don't have to be strong all the time. And I think one thing I learned the most, especially if you have young kids, and especially with my daughter, is it's okay to let them see you be sad sometimes and be vulnerable, and ultimately it helps them understand you as a human. mommy's not always going to be strong. Mommy's not always going to be okay. And that's okay. Show them that. You're allowed to break sometimes. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel all the emotions. But on the other hand, be strong. Like, be strong for yourself, not just for your baby, but for yourself, because you've got this. You're a mom. You're strong. You're freaking doing the thing. So keep on doing that and trust yourself. Trust yourself. Trust your gut. You know what's best for you and your baby. Keep doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And like advocating for your baby. You are your baby's voice. Let it be heard. And just feeding off the like, it's okay to not be okay. That meant so much to me. And basically, throughout pregnancy, throughout her hospital stay, throughout her passing, even now, like, it's okay to not be okay. It's normal. And then speaking off of normal, because I've come to absolutely kind of not like that word, is one thing that really helped me and my husband was your normal is going to change. You're going to have a new normal, but embrace it. Embrace every bit of it, the good, the bad, the sad, the hurt. Embrace it all. Like feel those feelings. It's okay to be in them and to feel them. And that goes back to the it's okay to not be okay.
Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time today to share your story with us and about your experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley and Corinne, for sharing your stories with us. It's unfortunate that so many of us have been in this exact position. Going to that anatomy scan, just excited to see your baby, but learning instead that something is wrong. For many of us, this leads to many more questions than answers. Now we worry how this diagnosis will affect our baby. Will they be born medically complex but live a long life? Or will they be born and only live a few minutes? And on top of these questions, we grieve over never getting to have that normal pregnancy and birth experience, especially when the diagnosis is deemed non-compatible with life. We are pre-grieving the loss of them that we know is coming. It's just an impossible situation to be in all around. It's layers of grief on top of more grief. And knowing that the loss is coming still can never prepare you for the loss itself. Nothing can ever prepare you for that. Have you received this type of diagnosis during pregnancy? What was your experience like? Did the doctors treat you differently? I would love to hear about your experience. You can always email me at sarah@journeyforjasmine.com or message me on any of my social media at journeyforjasmine. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.